Hi Lois. So today's video is called Self-Responsibility That Actually Works. It has to do with the art form of actually working with self-responsibility in a way that is a power move, generates personal power, rather than kind of affirming guilt, affirming brokenness, or confirming shame inside of us, right? So many of us, when we're faced with a need to take self-responsibility, can fall into one of two kind of unconsciously habitual places. One is to internalize everything. So, to take over responsibility. So absorbing the actions and the choices of another person. Somehow using the concept of self-responsibility to reinforce our own sense that we're to blame for everything that happens, right? This is often unconscious, but it is a mechanism in many of us. So there's that side of it. And then there's the other side, which is kind of basically having resistance to taking any responsibility for our part in things because we fear it might affirm our brokenness and our blame, our blame in the situation. So it's similar. They're two sides of the same coin, both kind of hinging on the over-internalization and resistance to taking responsibility, taking full responsibility. Both kind of go awry when they're sourced in this deeply unconscious belief that we're broken and it's all our fault. So that place, if we can go deeper under that and find self-responsibility as an art form, embrace it as a power move, then we actually can gather power through all of the relational difficulties that we encounter, both generated by ourselves and generated by others, right? So that life is showing us that we are warrior lovers, that we are love artists. We're not victims, and we're also not kind of entitled, hardened women, right? So I have a couple things for us to consider together. One is to be able to hold both. So I think that there's a way that it is important to name what wasn't okay, right? That there's a moment, there's deep import in being able to say, to feel, and to name that something, the actions of someone, were not okay, period. Their choices to be aggressive, to be demeaning, to lie, to whatever it is, those were their choices, and they were not okay, period. Your responsibility aside, it's almost like you pull the two out for a minute. That was their responsibility. That is theirs. And that's how you can really find your way into making sure that you are not internalizing all the consequences of someone else's dishonorable behavior. So that's one thing, important. And it needs to sit in and of itself in a way. Like, it's not a time to be trying to take your responsibility when first what you're trying to understand is what was out of integrity in front of you, or that was happening, or in the way that you were being treated. You have to allow someone else to have the consequences of their own actions and give them the power of their choices. They chose to lie, to get aggressive, to dismiss you, to criticize you, whatever the things are. That was their choice, and it's theirs. It has nothing to do with you. Give that a minute. And then move and hold the other hemisphere. It's almost like, okay, you've done that. You got the message. You understand what was happening in the situation. You understand what was out of integrity. You've allowed yourself to name it without absorbing all the blame for it. important, true. And then moving into self-responsibility from there, it's almost like moving into a little bit of a different realm where you say, all right, I heard that message. I'm going to hang up the phone now. I got it. Now, I'm going to look entirely at my part. Even if it was 5% of the situation, especially if it was 50 or more percent of the situation, how was I out of integrity? How was I becoming someone who was aggressive in her own way, or who dismissed the other? Whatever their choices were, whatever they were doing, we have our choices in the face of that. And that's where we're evolving. And that's where our power lies. Who and what we choose to serve in any moment, and what we will be or will not be an instrument for. So we can take, after naming the experience and what wasn't okay, we can come in and really just take a minute to see and look without blame. Where are we as artists of life and as artists of relationship? What did I give voice to that I regret? What did I become an embodiment of that is not my true nature? And there's power in that, because the responsibility that you're taking in that is not the responsibility for somebody else's actions. It's the responsibility for your own. And there is where you have the choice points and where you can gather power to make different choices and become more of who you really are through this situation, right? You take responsibility for what you became a voice for, an embodiment of, what you created, right? You and yourself, right? In whatever situation. So there's a way of holding both, right? But in a way, letting them be differentiated. Yes, we co-create everything, but it's kind of muddy, and it doesn't give either one its full power. So let yourself differentiate it out. Let me feel for a minute completely and own and say and give the consequences of the actions of the other to them. I'm going to name it completely. I'm not trying right now to take responsibility for myself. I'm trying to see clearly what was happening and what was being done as best I can. Now I move into the realm of, all right, and now who and what do I serve, and what will I choose, and what do I want to reckon with inside of myself, so that things aren't muddied, right? This whole thing of, for me, I've experienced a lot of very muddy kind of guidance and conversation around self-responsibility. Well, it's always a co-creation. Well, what it means to take self-responsibility is that if you see it in someone else, then it must be saying that you are doing the same thing. There's a lot of kind of oversimplifications and muddying of the process of actually taking full ownership. So I would encourage you to differentiate and give yourself both in their fullness, rather than trying to make them, make sense of what is usually really complex. These are complex situations. So one other note I have is, which is similar, which is just to understand that it's not necessarily easy to reach out and acknowledge and really claim the parts of you that are so insecure, that are so controlling, that are so fucking entitled and critical and, so desperate. Right? A lot of times when we're asked to take self-responsibility, we have to look, if we're honest and we're really transparent, we have to look at some difficult things. And they will not match our portrait of who we want to be, who we think we are, what we think is empowered, perhaps, who knows. But what's true is that this is you. It's coming to that place of all right, fine, I want all of me. I want all of me. Finding that place in you. I want the part of me that's a total bitch. And not so that I can exalt her, not so that I can be more and more of that, but so that I can harvest and understand that part of me, right? I want the part of me that is so insecure. I want her. I want that here with me, because when that is here with you, when you have brought your arms around all these parts of yourself that often get very, very obvious, more articulate in intimate relationships, then they're with you. And you actually have the potential of evolving them with you towards what you really want to serve, the real expression of your deeper self and the truth that you want to express on this planet, on your earth walk. So, remember that you are gathering power by simply embracing yourself, even when it doesn't look like power to you. It's not about portraits. This is about your energy and your embrace of it, so that you can be full of all that you are. Because every part of you, at her root, your anger, your control, your entitlement, your anxiety, your insecurity, if you bring them to you and commit to the walk of understanding all of yourself, deeply listening to all these places to understand what they need, they have wisdom. No part of you, in its essence, is here to hurt you. Right? We get fragmented. We get shaped by experiences. And we all are walking a walk of, refining and gathering enough personal power to really become and give voice to what we want to give voice to, rather than what we're conditioned to or what we react into, right? So remembering that taking responsibility it's an embrace. And yeah, and that's part of why it's a power move. Not just because it's the right thing to do. Like, great, it is the right thing to do, whatever that means, to take responsibility, to take self-responsibility. But that's not enough of a reason to do it. You do it because you want yourself. Do it because you want personal power. And you want to sit in self-authority. And you want to be deeply in alignment with who and what you really want to serve and what you will give voice to in this lifetime. Right? So, well, and that was the other thing. Let it show you what you will or will not be an instrument of. So, I have been an instrument of desperation multiple times. I have been an instrument of control, like extreme need to control. Do I understand now the deeper needs underneath of that? Has it been years worth of learning to tend to myself and tend to my own psyche? Yes, that's the walk. But I'm making the walk, and I invite you to do it as well, because we get to choose what we'll be an instrument of. Especially as a woman, there's a vessel here. You can fill, embody, and give voice to, give expression in so many ways to who and what you really want to serve. And it will take strength, and it will take time, and it will take commitment to clean up your vessel, to clean up your psyche, and to strengthen your psyche, to strengthen your resolve, so that the life that you're living does actually reflect your heart and does actually reflect the magnificence of what you really are. Oh, I have a note here. So one thing is to take responsibility, not just for what you allowed or didn't do, but what you did do. So I work with a lot of women, and there's one whole piece of taking self-responsibility that's like, wow, I allowed a lot of shitty behavior in that relationship. I allowed this, that, and the other thing. I didn't give voice. There, in some ways, for many women, it can be easier to take responsibility for all the things that they allowed and that they didn't do than what they did. So You know, what did they do? What did you do? You know, how critical were you? Are you? How impossible to please might you be? You know, how how in what ways are you not tending to your own anxieties, your own deep reverence and embrace of yourself, so that you can relate from a place other than those, right? So there's a way of, there is some responsibility to what we allow and what we don't do. You know, and that's a hard enough responsibility to take. Like, oh my God, I threw myself under the bus countless times in that relationship or in this life by just look at, oh my God, look at everything that I allowed. And then look at what you also did. So that's almost, you know, it's what did you allow and what did you give voice to? And that is an important thing, because it can get, especially in imbalanced, if that tends to be our imbalance, that we allow things that are not okay, that tends to be our kind of more obviously conditioned state, it can be a little harder because it's probably a little more unconscious, and it's a little less what we identify with, the ways in which we do things like neglect, criticize, act aggressively, whatever it is that is our part, right? Yeah, and the last thing I would say, and I think this goes back to being able to just pull it apart for a minute, pull apart the dynamic, to be able to say that's your responsibility and this is mine, is to keep it clean. So especially if you're in a relationship, or maybe if you want to make amends, if you do a little bit of reckoning and you realize that you'd like to make some amends for something you never owned in a previous relationship, regardless of how shitty their behavior was, that you would like to own your own shitty behavior, keep it clean. So resist any temptation, like how to get it clear to someone else if you want to give it as a gift, if you want to take self-responsibility and give that as a gift. So you're gathering your own power from it, but it is also a profound gift to give another person. And you'll know that if anybody you've ever been in a relationship with who's really hurt you by their actions has come to you and taken responsibility. It is a profoundly healing experience. So if you come to a place and you want to offer that to someone else, then just keep it clean. I want you to know that this and that was what I did because you were so, or in response to how this and that you were, I know that I was really, like, just don't. Keep it clean. Straight arrow. I want you to know I was controlling. I want you to know I never saw you fully. And I want you to know that you were never, I made you feel like you were never enough through my words, through my actions, whatever it is, and that's it. Your peace only, and bing, just let that be the offering that it is, so that it's clean and it can arrive for you and for this other person to whom you may want to give the gift of your own self-responsibility. It'll free both of you, but not if it's kind of still a little entangled in, well, yeah, I was that, but except for because you were this way, or, it's just, yes, they were probably that way, but again, you're differentiating out so that there can be really clean power, clean acknowledgement, and clean personal power that becomes all yours because it's disentangled. So those are some of my thoughts on the art of self-responsibility. It comes from watching many women, and certainly watching myself, kind of straddle real self-responsibility, but going to the sides of over-responsibility or resistance of our real part. And that, finding the nuance of all of that is very much about understanding that never, ever, ever is self-responsibility synonymous with punishment or the validating of someone else's harmful behavior. Never. It's never about confirming that anything is your fault. As soon as you notice that in your psyche, as soon as you notice that you know that what's happening is you're not actually taking self-responsibility. You are allowing yourself to be, whatever you're doing, but you're not taking self-responsibility. Self-responsibility is a power move always, and it acknowledges that we're all human, and it acknowledges that you're not to blame. But in every situation in life, to be able to come closer to your own integrity, to reckon with the regrets that you have, to let life show you where you are not the person yet that you really want to be, and where you are not yet expressing what it is you really want to bring into the world. That is a good walk. And it's not easy, but it is not shaming in any way. So as I bring this forward and as I offer you these thoughts on the art of taking self-responsibility, that's what I want to be really clear about, because when we're secretly self-shaming or validating the sense that it's all our fault or that we're broken, then we usually end up either taking over responsibility or resisting responsibility altogether, and we miss finding ourselves in truth somewhere in the middle and all that we were created to be, so that we can move forward through these things, and have relationships that we love and that we respect. This is how we learn. So anyway, the art of self-responsibility, that's my offering for today. And you can see, so my book is out. I'm going to show it to you probably most of the videos now. Break the Grip of Past Lovers. I'm getting great reviews on it. I didn't know how it would go. You never know how it's going to be received, but it's helping a lot of women. And chapter 5 is all about taking your own responsibility, specifically in intimate relationships and past loverships. So you can find it on Amazon. I'll put a link down below. And yeah, I wish you all the best as you and I join one another in living a life of integrity that we can respect from a place of deep reverence for all the things, all the many things that we are. Blessed be.